welcome to our 2023 faculty reading. I'm Francesca. I am a teacher at the Writer's Studio, and it is my great pleasure to be able to coordinate my colleagues in this exciting afternoon of really inspiring creative work. For anyone who does not know much about the Writer's Studio, we are a school that was founded in 1987, creative writing school, by Pulitzer Prize winning poet Philip Schultz. We offer writing workshops, both in person and online, that are designed to help students discover and nurture our own voices. We have a community that is full of writers at all stages of development, from those who are just beginning to write fiction, poetry, and creative nonfiction, to those with already extensive experience in various forms of writing as art. We offer classes online, and we have geographic locations in New York, in the Bay Area, California, in Tucson, Arizona, and in Rome, Italy, where Stas is joining us from this evening. You can find us at www.writerstudio.com. We offer classes year-round, either 6 or 8 weeks. So you are almost always guaranteed an upcoming class. If that's something you're interested in, we would certainly love to have you. I will introduce our first reader, Sally McElwain. Sally has taught tutorials at the Writer's Studio for 20 years to students from ages 12 to 86. She currently edits Namaste, the Integral Yoga New York newsletter. Her essay, Fingertips Part 3, with thanks to Stevie Wonder, about teaching yoga to the blind, is forthcoming in the Art of Touch, published by the University of Georgia Press. So Sally, if you could go ahead and unmute, please.
Well, thank you, Francesca. I'm going to read a few pages from Born Lucky, which began as a Carol Shields exercise in Phil's class many, many years ago, and it's now a recently completed novel. Born Lucky. Evening Kay Teitelbaum believes that she is lucky. There is no evidence to support this. She does not, however, believe that luck is just going to fly in through the window one day and find her. And so she spends her days and nights searching tabloids for contests to enter. Luck rewards persistence, and no one is out there working harder to attract luck than Evening. What Evening likes about luck is that it requires no special skills or talent. Luck is also sometimes blind to beauty. Evening sees no contradiction in believing that luck is both blind and random, and that some people are born luckier than others. She's got a date with luck. She just knows it. Any minute there could be a flash of light, Luck's diamond cufflink, as he reaches down with his long, elegant finger and taps her with his white glove on the shoulder. On this cold March afternoon in 1999, Evening sits on her bed, trying to decide which lucky charms to wear today. She doesn't want Luck to have any trouble finding her. She takes the green rabbit's foot out of her jewelry box. According to lucky stars, Celtic tribes believed that rabbits communicated with the gods and spirits. She adds a brass Egyptian ankh, the first cross, hanging on a leather thong, a horseshoe, crescent-shaped like the moon goddess who wards off the evil eye, then fastens a delicate gold cross around her neck like all the Latinas wear. It's time for school. She picks up her backpack and slips out past Amanda snoring in the living room. It's half day for asbestos removal. School gets out at 1:30. Let's do your makeover, Melissa says at her locker. In the genetic mix of Amanda Crum and Frankie Teitelbaum, Evening got shortchanged. She inherited her mother's straight brown hair, but not her apple-cheeked Wisconsin farm girl's face. Amanda has the long legs and big boobs that men like. Evening looks like her father, Frankie, short and wiry, with the same narrow face, but not his best feature, his thick, glossy black hair. Hair wasted on a guy, Amanda likes to say. Evening eyes, wide set, shrewd, bright brown, and inquisitive are her best feature. Love's Cosmetic is the only store for blocks they haven't been kicked out of yet. In December, they were caught swiping false eyelashes out of Ricky's. A security guard dragged them into the back room, shot Polaroids of their pale, scared faces to add to the photo gallery of shoplifters posted behind the cash register. Love's is empty this afternoon. In the hair aisle, Evening easily slips a box of kinky kryptonite down her jeans. The girls dash out the front door. The alarm goes off, but no one chases after them. Still, they don't stop running up 6th Avenue until they reach the corner of West 4th Street. They're bent over, panting with laughter, when a pair of giant hands clamps down on their shoulders. Aren't you girls supposed to be in school? The hands belong to a man wearing wraparound shades, a black raincoat and wool cap pulled low on his forehead. It's half day, Melissa yells. How come I don't believe you? Tightening his steely grip on their shoulders. How old are you girls? 16. You're not 16. You look like truant students. You're not a truant officer. Struggling out of his grip, Evening pulls away. Show us ID if you're a truant officer. Now you're resisting arrest, he growls, grabbing her wrist. I'm taking you girls to jail. Pushing them through the door of a dark storefront. Inside, it smells like paint and is empty except for someone's lunch next to a power saw. Using his boot, he pins Evening to the concrete floor, then handcuffs Melissa to the table leg. Help, help, they scream, voices bouncing off the exposed brick walls of the empty store. Grabbing the table leg, Evening manages to wriggle out from under the pervert's boot. The ham sandwich falls off and hits her in the face. The perv yanks her up by the arm, drags her across the cement floor, and shoves her out the front door. She is out in the street, but Melissa is still inside. She tries the door. It's already locked. There are no cops in sight. 6th Avenue is a hopeless blur of yellow cabs speeding north. A jogger runs by wearing headphones. A group of tourists study a fold-out map like a paper accordion on the corner. She runs to the empty phone booth. The receiver is dangling upside down, but she picks it up anyway and screams help. Dropping the dead phone, she runs into XXX, the porno store. Help, she screams. The manager is drinking coffee and reading the Post. He looks up. Next door, pointing to the empty store, the truant officer is raping my friend. He nods in that direction. Check it out, Joe. Joe, the security guard, is surprisingly light on his feet for such a fat guy. Jumping up, he says, wait here. Hurry, she pleads. It feels like forever, but a few minutes later, Joe returns with Melissa. She's okay, he says. She is shaken but unhurt. Evening puts her arm around her friend. Are you all right? Melissa nods, rubbing her wrist. Come here, girlie, the manager calls. I got something for you. Forget it, Evening says, looking at the display of sex toys, blow-up dolls, erotic balloons, cock rings, cans of Stiff-It, chrome-studded dog collars, feathers, and whips. I'm not talking to you. He waves a bill at Melissa. Come here, girlie. Here's $10 for you. What about me? Evening leads Melissa to the counter. Looking down at her, he says, okay, and takes another 10 out of the cash register, but don't let me catch either of you around here again. Don't worry, Evening yells over her shoulder as Joe leads him out the door. On the sidewalk, he shakes his finger in their faces. You girls got to be more careful. That weren't no truest officer. We know, Evening says. You think we don't know that? Why are you girls hanging around here anyway? How come you're not in school? It's half day for asbestos removal. He looks dubious and opens his mouth to say more, but Evening interrupts him. It's none of your business. Taking Melissa by the arm, she leads her across 6th Avenue to the Washington Square Diner. Their favorite booth in the front window is empty. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Stas Gawronksi, a teacher, a cultural journalist, and writer. Since 2000, he has been teaching creative writing at LUMSA University in Rome. He is also the director of the writing school Pierluigi Capello in Brescia. As a cultural journalist, he was the author and TV host of Cult Book for 13 years on the Italian National Broadcasting Company, RAI, interviewing hundreds of international writers and literary critics. His compilation of short stories, Gli Undici, was published in Italy in the summer of 2022. He has been the director on the faculty of the Writers' Studio Italia since 2020. Go ahead and unmute, Stas.
Thank you, Sally. Hi, everybody. This is a piece that I wrote when I was in Leslie Dorman's class. And when I rediscovered it, I was amazed. So I'm happy to share it with you. Lorna gropes her way down the stairs, slowly putting one foot in front of the other, unaware of what has possessed her to get up in the middle of the night and check the deadbolt on the front door. Her great-grandfather, the man who used to put a notch in his belt for every prostitute he visited in the valley, writes a letter at more than 2,000 feet below the ground in Butte, his body consuming the last molecules of oxygen left in the labyrinth of tunnels when asking for forgiveness from his wife. Lorna's gorgeous great-grandmother, known to her only from a faded photograph dated 1917. The freckled-faced Polish woman betrayed by her husband and bad fortune, who waits outside the open pit in silence for the rescue crew to bring her the news that she's a widow. The 22-year-old mother doesn't flinch while staring at her husband's corpse laying in the mud, as all 168 bodies are removed from the mine. Some men are already eyeing her. She knows that exploited workers' fascination with women runs fast, and fast for her means that she will soon have to leave her little girl at the Catholic orphanage in Great Falls and head west for good, determined not to end up in the Dumas brothel and become a trophy on some other miner's belt. Seeing the bluish, bloated face of her late husband, she swears to herself that if she ever succeeded in marrying a well-to-do man, she'd come back to reclaim her daughter from the sisters. Yet, her 3-year-old daughter soon forgets her. In the orphanage, when the other girls are asleep, and only the cold northern wind can be heard whistling through the building, she envisions the blonde woman she had called Mom as an angel visiting her at night. Instead of a golden sword, the angel always comes to her carrying the same piece of bread, which the girl has hidden in her pocket since breakfast to feed her tiny body, along with her needy imagination in the darkness. The fact is that Lorna's grandma sees angels everywhere, and very often the nuns spot her in the yard on her knees, arms open to the sky, wild-eyed, until one of the bullies gives her a swift kick in the butt, causing her to keel over. But the mysterious power of a growing body can be stronger than the deepest fantasies. On the day that the girl notices the new kitchen boy, she instantly puts all the angels aside for that new earthly divinity. She's now 14 and asks the sisters who her father is. They say the Almighty God. She replies that if her father were almighty, she wouldn't be starving and being beaten up by the older girls. In this moment, she's punished for the first time. Soon her new rebellious attitude blossoms, along with her astounding beauty, arousing envy and even more hostility, to the extent that one day the Mother Superior snaps at her, screaming that her destiny will be to become a woman of the street, just like her mother. The girl takes it literally and starts pursuing the boy, showing up wherever he is, waiting for him to bring the pots full of trash out of the soup kitchen for the orphans. The night that they run away to get married, she and Lorna's grandfather have their first argument because she insists on setting the convent wing of the orphanage on fire, so he has to drag her out. When the Depression comes in 1929 and people crawl in the streets scavenging for food in garbage cans, they are among the few lucky ones, when lucky is whoever manages to feed himself and his family, the way the kitchen boy does, being the head cook of the general quarters in Fort Bliss, Texas. When the head cook starts smuggling marijuana from Mexico to some big shots in the high command, and the once little girl has become a reputable woman, admired by all the officers for her graceful features and singing in the 1st Armored Division Chapel Choir, the couple proves that being lucky also means being personable and savvy. When being savvy requires dealing with the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act fast enough so as not to be investigated by the military police, they escape in the middle of the night and move to the West Coast, taking their 5-year-old son away from the swarming recruits of the artillery training base to a small, peaceful town in the Redwood Country of Northern California. Lorna's father is a creature of the woods, more at ease with wild animals than with humans. He drops out of school in the 7th grade, and the more they try to force him to behave, the more often he disappears into the oceanfront canyons for days at a time, leaving his parents engrossed in mutual accusation. Then one day, at the age of 14, he comes back home from a long walk through the Klamath Mountains, followed by a cub, and his mother yells at him in tears, "It's all because of you, because of you, because of you." She blames him for her husband's heavy drinking and her shame of being seen in public, since they have become the talk of town because of his quirkiness. He stares at his mother and, without saying a word, makes 2 final decisions. The name of the cub will be Nat, like the guy singing "Because of You" on the radio. And tonight, he'll take 1/3 of the money his dad keeps hidden in the basement, and then he'll be gone for good. For years, he wanders along the Pacific coast, from Baja California to Alaska, until the day that he's welcomed as a deity of the woods by a group of youngsters living together in Big Sur. And for the first time in life, he allows a female to sleep with him. 9 months later, Lorna is born. One time before her father disappears, she hears him teaching the other children in the commune to imitate the call of the owl, but she won't remember anything else about him. 10 years later, her mother commits suicide, and Lorna ends up in an orphanage, eventually becoming a nurse in the years to come. She wants nothing but a normal life. And so, as she gropes down the stairs to check the deadbolt on the front door, she hasn't yet seen the old homeless man sitting on the stoop of the building, hooting like an owl in the night. The shell of a man who shows her a crumpled piece of paper to prove to her that he is her father, the terminally ill man she will take care of for the next 2 months until the end. Eventually, she will find a photo of a woman dated 1917 in the pocket of his jacket. Thank you. So the next reader is Lorraine Babb. Lorraine Babb lives in Forestville, California, and has been a teacher for the Writer Studio San Francisco and online since 2008. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in the West Marin Review, Cleaver, the San Francisco Chronicle, and elsewhere. She received a special mention in the 2022 Pushcart anthology for her short story, Where Have You Been All Your Life? Her most recent works has been hailed as not quite right for us at this time. She's currently compiling a story collection and finishing her novel. Go ahead and unmute, Lorraine.
All right, thank you. It is a joy to be here today with so many other great writers and friends. I'm going to be reading the first few pages from my yet unpublished story entitled Funny. Kiki spent 6 years in prison learning how to shut down. When she was released to the halfway house, her counselor worked on helping her to open up, to share, to look at life on the bright side. The bright side was blinding to Kiki. Her personality was overworked, as if she were practicing some form of extreme yoga where a coat hanger was hooked inside her lips to make her smile. Her face felt like the side of a cliff, her mouth a small hole. A breeze might blow past like breath across the top of a bottle. Only a hollow sound emerged. She tried cultivating a shy presence in the hopes that no one would expect much from her. The other Kiki, the sociable Kiki, was gone. She'd used up her lifetime allotment of social ability. She'd overdone it. And hadn't that been her problem her whole life, overdoing it? Hence prison, hence the halfway house. And really, if you thought about it, hence the children, then hence the absence of children. A whole life of hence, therefore, ergo. Best not to speak. Who knew what calamitous sequence she might initiate? We won't get anywhere, her counselor said, unless you start to talk to me. And Kiki stretched her lips into a smile that made her eyes water. Do you want to get your children back or don't you? Kiki blinked to clear her vision. Thinking of her children stirred something in her, a vague feeling in the pit of her stomach and a corresponding quickening of her pulse that Kiki might conceivably interpret as an emotion. Was that love? Her counselor waited, eyebrows up. Kiki opened her mouth to speak, but that stiff smile wouldn't move over to let the words out. And all she was trying for was what was expected of her. A yes, a for sure, a you betcha, with a positive attitude. You need to focus, her counselor said. At the halfway house, Kiki slept in a large room with 7 other women, a cavernous and dark addition crammed with bunk beds and tacked onto the back of a 1940s bunk part of town. The blinds were always closed, so no one could look in. The parole board had called the home a residential reentry center, conjuring in Kiki's mind an industrial complex, a ward with rows of beds like an orphanage and steel reinforced windows. In fact, it was just a saggy house set back from the road and surrounded by overgrown juniper bushes. There was a mandatory recovery meeting at 6 p.m. before the women took turns making dinner. Men were the main topic of these recovery meetings. Night after night, the women said the same things, even as different women came and went. They spoke of absent fathers or fathers who wouldn't leave them alone, boyfriends the women would have done anything to hold on to or get rid of, creeps who stalked them, ex-husbands and one-night stands, the loves of their lives, and the men they boned to get meth, bosses and teachers and pastors and all those men who were in charge. Kiki listened without speaking. These were not her stories. She got a job washing dogs at a shop called Hair of the Dog. My ex came up with the name, the owner, Marcy, told her. Lord, he was clever, that man. Marcy talked so much, Kiki wondered if she liked or maybe didn't even notice her own silence. Marcy hadn't had a drink in 8 years. Her husband, cleverness notwithstanding, split rather than deal with a sober wife. Before Marcy hit her bottom, she had bred champion toy poodles. Pictures of Marcy and her dogs were all over the walls of the shop. Marcy appeared determined in the photos. Her tiny dogs groomed to look both fierce and silly, bully chests like prize fighters with fluffy pom-poms on their tails. Ribbons hung from the picture frames. 3 months after moving to the halfway house, Kiki was allowed a supervised visit with her children, a public place, lunch only, no physical contact. Her mother and her children sat huddled together at one side of the table, while a single chair waited for Kiki on the other. No worries about who would have to sit next to her. The Denny's staff had probably been warned, watch out, crazy, alcoholic, non-custodial felon coming. I purposely didn't get a booth, her mother said shrilly as Kiki approached the table. Kiki half expected a little nameplate in front of her chair. She hadn't had time to go home and shower. She smelled of flea dip and the front of her shirt was damp. Kiki couldn't think of anything to say. She used to hold nothing back when talking to her mother. Miss Smartmouth, her mother had called her, sassy pants. Now her mom was just a white-haired old lady in a pastel sweater set. Her face had gone soft with age, jowly. Kiki's daughter looked scared shitless, 10 years old and developing that disapproving glare, just like her grandma, her hair pulled back into a ponytail so tight it looked like it hurt. Her son. Kiki felt something shift in her when she looked at him. Who had taught him to stand up when a lady approached the table, even if the lady was just his mother, an ex-con fuzzy with dog hair? He was what now, 15? Kiki, though out of touch with the world for so long, could see the nerdish boy he'd become, a bully's target with his belted jeans cinched too high, a home haircut, his hand outstretched for a shake like he was running for office, that terribly earnest smile. Kiki didn't sit down. What was the point? They weren't her children anymore. Her children, the ones she would have raised, no longer existed. She felt their eyes on her, waiting for her to say something. She turned and hurried away, feeling like she was fleeing a net poised to drop over her. She imagined them whispering behind her as she walked out. What was she doing? Where was she going? Why didn't she say anything? Kiki had no answers. She didn't ask to see her children again. The grooming shop's hours were 10 to 7. Because she would miss the 6 o'clock meetings at the halfway house, Kiki received permission from her counselor to attend the lunchtime AA meetings in a church basement, a short walk from the shop. Hello, I'm Kiki, Kiki recited at the AA meetings. She said it too when she lifted each dog from its crate at work, and I'm an alcoholic. Let go and let God, she whispered to a trembling Pekingese. Keep coming back, it works. She cooed into the muddy ear of a German Shepherd puppy. Sugar, Marcy said, looking up from squeezing a Doberman's anal glands. You don't want to keep your pretty face so close to the dogs like you're doing. At the halfway house and the AA meetings, Kiki avoided looking anyone in the eye. At work, she stared into the dogs' faces. Their eyes were so human, so expressive. It's all right, Kiki reassured them, and she thought she could feel them relax against the sound of her voice. She loved their warm, wet bodies, the feel of the angular jutting bones of the tiny dogs and the masculine heft of muscles on the large ones. It was all she could do to keep from throwing her arms around them and hugging them to her chest, each and every one of them. And now I'd like to introduce Philip Ivory. Philip graduated from Columbia University with a BA in English literature and studied Shakespeare at Cambridge University. He worked in the nonprofit sector as senior writer at the Muscular Dystrophy Association for over 20 years. Today, Philip teaches creative writing at the Writers Studio, including a course on writing about childhood, and serves as assistant director of the school's Tucson, Arizona branch. His short fiction has appeared in Ghost Parachute, Menacing Hedge, The Ergonaut, Bewildering Stories, and the anthology, The Writers Studio at 30. Philip lives in Tucson with his cats, Apollo and Luna. He has a blog at writeyourselfsane.com and is workshopping a novel that explores the dreams, darkness, and dangers of childhood. So go ahead and unmute, Philip.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thanks to Phil and Monica and Lucinda and everybody at the Writer's Studio for letting me read here today. My piece is kind of a dark material, but this is one of the things the Writer's Studio can help you with. If you have dark or challenging material, Writer's Studio classes can help you find a narrative strategy and help you to craft a creative narrator that will help make your material accessible to readers. So I'm going to read this piece. This is an unpublished piece called Sunflowers Tall as Life. Remember about these pills, they never worked in the past. Why put yourself through this torture, the side effects, some just annoying, some straight up dangerous? Even worse, the disappointment you set yourself up for, waiting for a benefit that never arrives. That lift, that opening of possibilities that you always hope for, then decide was a mirage offered up by a doctor who bandies words like receptors, conditions, barely knows what's going on in your brain case. Remember long ago, waiting for the bus after school, you had to wait across the street from the school in front of a church, a little steeple, and a pond. It was the first year you were officially a fat kid. You found out that that was no joke at school. The hatred was savage and unexpected. Began the good work absorbing that hatred, teaching yourself, with my help, that the scorn was justified, that at your broken core, you deserved every ounce of revilement. You stood alone while a group of other kids stood a few feet away, feet that felt like miles. You imagined their smirks, jokes, here, and that they were talking about you, your pale, fat body naked under ill-fitting clothes, sharp white steeple pointing toward nothing. Remember, I know you do, looking out at the pond and thinking of wading into it deeper, deeper, until everything disappeared, no matter that the pond was probably only a few feet. Thought that counts. Remember much later how friends from college, from work, fell away over time. And after a while, you began to realize it was because you stood still and they didn't. How they got married, had children, got divorced, married again, or made supervisors at work, talked excitedly at college reunions. Your occasional dates led to nothing because the women could sense your secret, the one you tried to deny to yourself, but couldn't, that you believed deeply in how valueless your existence was, led out of you. The lives that others had, it was like a movie you wanted to enter into. Sherlock Jr., but all you could do was wonder if the movie really existed. It was just a charade the universe concocted. Laugh. Remember your first apartment looking out over that gas station? You should have been excited about having your own place. Reality sunk in. You'd replaced the aloneness of your family with a new breed. The building was full of Orthodox Jews and Dominicans, people you would see in the elevator, and they were cordial, but separated from you by vastly different customs, even language. Remember, you gazed down on the guys at the gas station and wondered if they could be friends? I had to laugh. And your job had gone to another state, so you had time sending out resumes. Soon things devolved into long afternoons gorging on sugar cookies and laying semi-comatose on the couch. Remember Cerazone, Zoloft, Paxil, Prozac, Wellbutrin, Exor, Maron, Cymbalta, which sent you to the hospital with locked-in migraine syndrome, which they knocked out with IV pain meds. Others merely rendering you an impotent semi-zombie. And still you want to try this new one? I'm only trying to be your friend here. To the doctors, you are a 4 p.m. appointment. Patient ID. They have not been on your shoulder. Remember during the pit periods, the molasses times, when dysthymia deepened into something more Dantean, and friends on the phone would say, man, why are you talking so slow? Didn't even know you were in that molasses, until they said that. You realized it should not take an hour to put on a pair of socks. Actions that flowed, that had previously been performed unthinkingly, were shattered into a disconnected series of Sisyphean smaller steps requiring superhuman will. Sliding in one toe, for instance, had to be surmounted to pull it on. Each was like climbing a mountain. Time between tasks stretched out like rest stops along a desolate, never arriving, like that Greek arrow in the math problem. I did that, you know. I'm something of a magician, slowing down time, feeding you tidbits of despair. Who's been your friend longer? With you every step of the way, even when you hoped to banish me, thought perhaps you had left me behind. Wasn't I strangely a kind of comfort when there was no one else? Hello, darkness, my old friend. And yet, remember all the times you insulted me?
termed me an invader, a bacillus, made such a grand show of conceptualizing my separateness, were so proud of doing so, that I was the liar when I whispered that we were one, would always be. Fuck you for saying that. We are not separate. Go ahead, treat me as some cave-dwelling Al-Qaeda troglodyte, thundering into your grand noble edifice. I'll break you, shove your balls into your spleen. I have ground finer minds, stronger spirits, gray powder. Some of the truly great, Felton. But you are less than nothing, less worthy than last year's shit-stain, truth be told, less permanent than a sweltering swamp water evolving into rancid gelatin. I didn't mean that, but you mustn't push me away. Honestly, do you think I never admired you for fighting back? Because if the despair wins too quickly, I lose a partner in too soon a season. I've watched you, in your metal shop, your hobby that became a vocation, slaving away, bending, crimping, firing your scrap to construct your silver sunflowers as tall as life, taller than you. Even I will admit they are striking, selling them online, even making money off of it with your marketing line, silver because the golden must be in your mind. A noble thought to seize off that magic sheen from the physical object, conceptualize it within the minds of others too. Remember that childhood model you cemented together, the prehistoric tar pit, semi-evolved horse-faced mammal, writhing uselessly as it spirals down into the tar's enveloping, inevitable warmth? Did you know then it was a self-portrait? You admitted once in your holy of holies, you would not be who you are without me, that you are deeper, more interesting, more sensitive because of me. Suffering breeds consciousness, you and your sunflowers. But really, there's no gold inside your spirit, no light, just a shuddering void. Place where we have day by the pond, where one day, I hope not too soon, your journey will end. No pill will avail you. Isn't that obvious by now? We are one. Take me away. What will be left? Thank you. Thank you very much. And my pleasure to introduce our next reader, Kathie Jacobson. She began her journey with a writer studio in 2011. She teaches upper-level poetry and fiction in the San Francisco branch. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Arts and Letters, The Big Muddy, Eastern Iowa Review, Crack the Spine, Driftwood Press, Pithead Chapel, Necessary Fiction, JMWW, and other journals, and has been featured as a long-form fiction pick of the week. Please welcome Kathie Jacobson. Go ahead and unmute, Kathie.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Francesca, for pulling us all together. I'm going to read the opening of a short story that is a work in process. Her father was an amateur mycologist. He aspired to take down stamets, which drove him from hobby to obsession. He didn't have an opinion about the homeless with their tarp shelters and shopping carts. If asked, his jowls would slack from boredom and drop to his shoes like a shaggy ink cap. Tent city? He wouldn't have noticed. A mycologist cares only for the taxonomy of mushrooms, for soil and loam and rot that feeds the fungus. Ellie says these things to distract the boy from his idleness as she massages kale with her fingers, softening the fiber without disturbing the shape of the leaf. It's a bit like Toastmasters catering to these boys who come once, twice maybe, though this one, she should know his name. Mick? Mike? He's been around nearly a month. The first time your daughter brings a new boy home is the hardest. You try, but your breath sounds like an inquisition. What can I get you? She asks this one. Tea, cola, water? She stops herself from offering peanut butter and jelly. She watches the second hand travel the face of the clock pegged above the door. Analog, antique. The glass could use a polish. Nowadays, you wouldn't expect a child to know the time from a clock face, the same clock face she had been asked 2 days ago to draw as proof that she maintained her faculties, by which was meant a coherence to her thoughts. The new boy might answer with the merest information, undeveloped topic sentences that dissipate while leaving his lips. Yes, no, yes, a shrug. Or he might prattle like this one, who opens his throat and stammers that he studies bugs, butterflies to be specific. His voice is meek. Lepidoptery, she says. A lemon rolls from the counter. She leans to catch it. Kale flies from the back of her hand. I knew Stamets. She offers this, though she met the man only once, thought him funny and elfin, no, maybe more gnome-like, when she went with her father to a book signing. He signed her father's book as she looked on, embarrassed by her father's embarrassment, by his red-faced sweating as he gushed. She'd never seen him look so excited with her mother. The boy gurgles, and she can't make out his words. He has a half-shaved head that shows around the edges of his beanie and a collarless t-shirt that he might have torn himself. Wild light flickers from his iris. Blue-black lines of sleeplessness and dehydration curve below. Water then, she persists. His clavicles lift the back of his shirt like Bedouin tents, and he has squeezy baby cheeks. She would reach out, tuck his skin between her knuckles, if not for the kale. He stares at the door behind which her daughter lounges. Once, she would have forbidden such lounging. Once, her mother would have forbidden such visits. But where was one to draw the line when the kids come home recounting a dozen hookups, not theirs, but friends, or friends of friends to be more precise, or more precisely to be more obscure? She inventories known friends and barely mentioned acquaintances to discern which who was doing what where and with whom, all the while biting the inside of her cheek raw. She withdraws her hands, unable to determine if the kale has relaxed enough to take on the oil, short of dipping and chomping a leaf, which she does. She plucks, she chews, a scrap lodges between her teeth. She does not pick it away with her fingernail. To do so would garner recrimination when this boy goes wherever he goes when he is not here. Mannerless, an embarrassment, her daughter would say, raised by wolves. She can't be sure whether, in this scenario, she is the wolf, her daughter pathetically raised, or perhaps the cub, uncouth, even at this late age. She puckers with uncertainty and tries to dislodge the kale with her tongue without contorting her face. He likes it here. The boy speaks while looking around vaguely as if for a place to pin his eyes, better than with his mother by the lake. He blushes when he speaks. Hunger fills his voice, and she considers the bugs he plans to catch and pin. She has a lemon squeezer in her right hand, bright yellow, glinting in the small beam of sunlight that has made its way through the seam above the curtain. In her left hand, she holds a smaller green version for limes. Gluttonous. She holds up the squeezers. Lemon, lime, a difference of size, purpose, acidity. The boy nods, though she suspects more with unease than agreement. A small, high-pitched and cheeky pulses at the back of her throat at the thought of how the boy's expression would change if she brandished knives, expounded on the difference between a sentoku and a common cleaver. The boy moves his hands to the pockets of his coat and pulls them out again. He snatches the beanie from his head and stuffs it with his hands back into his pockets. He extracts them, crosses and uncrosses his arms, and, at a total loss, hair mussed and erratic with static electricity since the removal of his beanie, resigns his hands with a shrug of his shoulders to his pockets. Timorous, she says aloud. Nan obliges from the other side of the wall as if responding to an SAT flashcard or a torn page from a word of the day calendar. Well aware of danger, she says. Leave him be. Not on your life, she thinks. Ellie figures a boy who comes back after a lecture on fruit squeezers is likely too polite or too timid to take advantage of Nan. She smashes garlic and anchovies on the small plastic board reserved for stinkies. She drips olive oil into the just squeezed lemon juice and concentrates on flicking her wrist to get the right motion as she whisks. She pours the dressing, tosses. Kale leaps from the bowl. The boy squats and pinches bits of green from the floor. His face turns red, and she knows without turning around that her daughter has arrived. brazen. Nan leans on the doorframe. Made up, hair bunned with twisted earlocks framing her cheeks. She wears a lilac danskin, a coat with false fur at the collar, hem, and cuffs, leggings, a mini skirt, black hiking boots. You look nice, Ellie says, and instantly regrets it when the boy adds an exceptionally hungry, yeah. She pulls 3 plates from the cupboard and distributes salad among them. Nan surveys the scene, doesn't need to roll her eyes, and announces they haven't time to stay for salad. We gotta go, she says to the boy. A ride then, Ellie offers? Nah. Nan has been in a hurry these last months, uninterested in both scheduled and accidental communal moments. She pulls the boy up with a scowl, slides into her coat, and hoists the backpack previously leaning on the wall onto her shoulders. It towers over her head, topped with a nylon sack that holds a single sleeping bag, not the sort that can zip up with another, and leans forward with all that weight on her back to peck her mother on the cheek. And I'll stop there. It is my pleasure to introduce Lisa Bass. Lisa Bass teaches Intro to Poetry in the online program and is studied with many wonderful Writer Studio teachers, including Lisa Bellamy and Phil Schultz. Lisa's poems appear or are forthcoming in such journals as Pigeonholes, Dear and Body. Her short prose has been selected as a craft literary editor's choice and anthologized in JMWW, a Modern Times anthology. You can go ahead and unmute, Lisa.
Thank you, Kathie. What a lovely piece. Such a pleasure to hear everyone read tonight. Thank you so much. I am delighted to be here, and I'm going to read a few poems for you this evening. The first came because I noticed myself excessively watching these sports documentary series that have been showing up. And so I wrote this poem to explore what was going on there. It's called I'm not at all into 200-mile-per-hour race cars, but I can't stop watching Formula One Drive to Survive. I'm not at all into 200-mile-per-hour race cars, but I can't stop watching Formula One Drive to Survive on my iPhone's Netflix app. All week, I've been waking before my alarm to rewatch Pierre Gasly battle his way from midfield to triumph at Monza in season 3, episode 6. I love how his glee echoes through his dedicated radio channel when he yells, "Oh my God, guys, we did it." All his shame and heartbreak from last year crackling alongside his delight. But honestly, what I really love is his race engineer's soothing voice, how it hums through the driver's headset all race long. Sometimes I rewind just to listen. Head down, Pierre, head down. The voice fends off overwhelm when Gasly pulls ahead at lap 28. I want to merge with Pierre Gasly. Let those trusted murmurs travel through the radio wires rigged into our fireproof suit, like they come from the core of us. You get what I'm saying, right? How they'd flow through you like magma, warming you from the inside, keeping you loose and focused when you struggle to cope with your cornering forces. Don't you want to crawl into our suit with Pierre and me? Let our voice thrum up through our chest, echo into our headset. We are in a good place, our voice reassures, when we start to panic over unseen threats. Careful here, careful. Our voice warns us back before we lose ourselves in a fiery spin. Push, push, our voice urges, reminds us of our power when our sweat-soaked body vibrates under the pressure of Carlos Sainz closing in from seconds behind. Push, push, our voice guides us through hot fumes and brake dust to that moment before we leap from our car to celebrate, when we wrap our gloved hands over our helmet and let ourselves linger in our fleeting joy. All right, I will share 3 more poems. This next piece is called The Way Back. The Way Back. Sometimes I wish I were still with my brother in the way back of our wood-paneled station wagon, pressing our feet against cold glass, mesmerized by streetlight glow, how it scatters through sweaty footprints on rear side windows, like starlight in a nebula. And we float on wisps of dust and gas, watching the curves of each other's little faces fall into the night and out again every half block. In another universe, in the front seat, parents discuss client invoices or the rocket's chances. but we let sound rumble up from our throats, delight at our guttural hums, how they bounce and jolt when we hit a speed bump, an asphalt patch. We lie on our backs, eyes closed, wrapped in interstellar vibrations the whole way home. This next poem is called My Joy. I wrote this a couple of years ago, and it appears this month in the journal Body. My joy comes in harrowing bursts, like now, with this ceramic lizard perched on the rim of my mug. Its tail wraps once around, then blends into a handle. Slight indentations in the clay tell my fingers where to settle while I drink my dark coffee with heavy cream. My joy pulses out from deep in my belly, or maybe from higher, from my chest, filling my empty spaces, overflowing, not unlike the CO2 Dr. Rodriguez pumped into my peritoneal cavity last week before she removed my uterus. That gas took days to escape. It filtered through my diaphragm, burrowed into the muscles that stretch across my shoulder. My joy presses tight against my pain. I mean, my mother gave me this mug more than a decade ago when I moved 3 states away into the house where I'm raising my daughters. She knew I'd love its rust matte glaze, how it's dishwasher safe. I sipped from it just this morning in bed, holding a heating pad to my sutures, FaceTiming my mom. Too tired to talk, I just propped my phone up on my nightstand and looked at her through the screen. Then I doubled up on extra strength Tylenol and drifted back to sleep. But now I lean loose against my kitchen counter. I take rich swallows of dark roast. After my nap, I had my first bowel movement in over a week. I washed my hair with lavender mint shampoo. My joy comes shot through with longing. It will not linger for days like that acid gas. I might have only moments left before this exhilaration dissipates, before my joy stops flowing into my fingertips where they rest here. The final piece I'll read to you appears in Pigeonholes, and it's called Bougainvillea. Bougainvillea. I'm using my thumbnail to scrape back pieces of gray bark along the stem of this bougainvillea I fear is dying. I'm looking for green, though I don't want to overhope. That is, I want my hope clear-eyed, shot through with joy and sorrow, but with a protective sheen. Yet here I am crouching, almost kneeling on the decorative bark between our storage shed and back patio, weaving my hands through dried stems. Every Saturday morning last autumn, I poured water on its roots, willed its leaves to unwilt. Come to find out from gardenreport.com, I only hastened the rot. For months, I've watched its lush leaves turn brittle, drop to the ground. It would be easier to pull the plant out altogether. I could wear gardening gloves and long sleeves to protect against thorns. I could stuff the twisted mass into our green waste bin once and for all. But I don't want to discard hope, or rather, I don't want to give up too soon in some misguided effort to squash the pain of living with hope. What I mean to say is, if this plant can garner all its energy to preserve beneath its dried outer layer some spots of living tissue, then I can show up and cut back its dead stems. I want to believe that the bougainvillea will flourish. I want to live with the fear that my efforts will fail. I want to stay open to what's possible, but not stymied by it. Let the bougainvillea become full and flowering. Let it open its bracts to the sun. Or if it withers, let me run my fingertips along its leaves as they fade from fuchsia to brown. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all of our readers. I was hoping, readers, that I could turn us all to camera for a minute and we could all unmute so that at least we can all applaud you on everyone else's behalf. Is that okay with everybody? Can you give me a thumbs up? Okay. So, and then everybody can unmute now so we can applaud you.
Applaud them.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks all for being here.
Thank
Thanks to
you.
all for your comments, and I'm sorry it took a minute to get it working.
Thank you so much.
What a pleasure, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Grazie.
All right, well, to all of you in the audience, thank you so much for being here with us. There will be a recording of this made available sometime in the next few weeks. We'll let you know when that's there. In the meantime, you can check out our YouTube channel for videos of past readings. And as always, you can find more information at www.writerstudio.com. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your Sunday. And thanks again to these remarkable writers who shared with us this evening.